Hey guys, this is the virtual meeting for Baton Rouge LAS for the month of June, and we have Ashley Taylor with us today. To start off, we're just going to ask a couple of questions to give you all a little bit of background on her and then turn the floor over. Ashley, first, do you want to give us a little bit of your background? Were you into undergrad, grad school, for anybody who doesn't know?
I'm from California, so I did my undergrad at Chico State, California State University, Chico. I received my BA in 2011, and I worked for the state first, was my first archaeological job before I switched to field work with the Forest Service. And eventually all of my supervisors informed me I had to go to grad school. So I gave in and went to grad school across the country. And I received my MA from LSU in December of 2019.
Very cool. We know today you're going to be presenting your thesis. What made you choose this topic?
My advisor suggested it to me. She knew I was interested in historical archaeology, and LSU had run a field class on weekends a few years ago at the Galvez Town site, and they allowed the public to come in and do some excavation with them. But since that time, articles have been written and published, but not much analysis has been done with the shovel tests. So my advisor asked if I would be interested in looking at that and helping to identify where specific features of the settlement were. And I was very interested.
Yeah, I know that years ago, the LAS members were involved in a couple of the excavations out there, a couple of the testing, and I was actually part of the 2011 field school that happened with
Nice.
Dr. Rob Mann. Yeah.
Okay,
So
cool.
I'm really interested to see what you have to say today.
Okay.
Well, without further ado, I'll hand it over to you.
Galvez Town was an 18th century Spanish fort and settlement located in southeastern Louisiana at the junction of Bayou Manchac and the Amite River and what is now Ascension Parish. The site was significant for helping to protect the interests of Spain during a time of changing geopolitical environments along the Gulf Coast. Today, this site is one of the most important historical archaeological sites in Louisiana. Culturally, this site is significant as the descendants of the settlers still live within the Baton Rouge metropolitan area and are actively involved in the research of the site. Archaeologically, the site is significant due to the limited disturbance and the lack of urban development at the location, which has protected the archaeological record. The first documented historical research at Galvez Town occurred in the 1920s by V. Scaramuzza. Since that time, historic research into the site has been sporadic. Archaeological research of the Galvez Town began in the 1980s and has been ongoing. The types of studies included archaeological transects and survey, shovel test pits, artifact analysis, and limited remote sensing. These studies were successful in determining the general locality of Galvez Town. However, specific features such as the actual fort location and the boundaries of the village have not yet been determined. For my thesis, I attempted to identify features of the Galvez Town settlement with the hope that they will help locate the boundaries of the Galvez Town fort. Galvez Town was one of 4 settlements established by the Spanish governor, Bernardo de Galvez, to house the recruited Canary Islanders, or Isleños. The settlement was chosen for its defensive location. The first Isleños arrived in Galvez Town in January of 1779. Within a few months, their population grew to 400. The Galvez Town village was laid out in a grid of 32 square blocks arranged around a central plaza. The blocks were then subdivided into 4 lots, which had an area of a quarter arpent, or 3,424.8 square meters. The plaza was approximately 4 square blocks wide and had 12 roads that connected with it. Ditches were dug around the structures to provide drainage during flooding. There were possibly 2 forts built in this location. The first fort was built between June and August of 1779. It was described as irregular in shape with 5 bastions. A 1793 report claimed the fort had 10 guns and was built up with a stockade. This report received heavy damage from flooding and may have been rebuilt in 1799. The Spanish crown was quick to realize that the settlement was not equipped to sustain itself. The first year, 1779, has been described as a complete loss for the government, as as the Isleños had been unable to produce their own food. As the years progressed, the population of Galveztown declined significantly. During the first year, disease entered the village and killed a substantial portion of the population. Diseases, drought, and flooding continued to decimate the settlement. After the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, the Isleños began leaving the settlement, with most of the population going to Baton Rouge. The first Spanish to leave the area were the soldiers in 1804. That same year, a visiting doctor described the remaining families as poor and very miserable. In 1806, a large portion of the Isleños left the village for Baton Rouge. In 1816, an American surveyor passed through the area and noted that Galveztown was of little consequence, consisting of a few ruined houses. In my attempt to identify the boundaries of the village and fort, I reviewed historical documents, did an artifact distribution analysis, analyzed soil color and midden locations, and georeferenced historical maps. The soil color was analyzed for the presence of anthrosols or midden. It should be noted that all the fieldwork was conducted between 2008 and 2011. Also, for the remainder of this presentation, shovel test pits will be referred to as STPs. I began my project by reviewing the history of Galveztown. I referenced the work of historians Gilbert Dinn, and V.M. Sfermuzza. From interviews conducted by Sfermuzza, we know that the fort's remains were visible up until the 1850s. The fort was described as extremely dilapidated. Sfermuzza also noted that the soil, which he assumed was the location of the Isleños' homes, was darker and in rectangular shape. This is an important observation as it suggests that the house lots may be identified archaeologically by changes in soil color. In addition to these documents, these secondary documents, I also referenced primary documents, including maps, letters, field notes, and aerial images. For the artifact distribution analysis, I began by sorting all the artifacts recovered from the STPs into categories. I followed the categories established by historical archaeologist Stanley South and the additions made to the categories by Helen O'Brien, the first recorded person to conduct archaeological research at the site. However, some of the artifacts did not fit into the established categories, so I created 3 new ones: historic Native American, prehistoric Native American, and modern. After the artifacts were sorted into the categories, I then created distribution maps of each category. It should be noted that the architecture number seen on the graph is misleading as the bricks were not counted and only weighed. Within the artifact distribution maps, I compared the artifact categories with specific artifact types. Some of the noticeable trends included that artifacts were more frequently observed along the N535 line and the E540 line, with STPs N525, E540, and N535, E515, producing the largest number of artifacts. Among the potentially significant observed relationships was a 30 by 60 metered area between the N520 line, the N550 line, the E500 line, and the E560 line. This area contained 44% of the counted artifacts, 55% of the brick, and 5.2 grams of charcoal. There was a strong presence of brick, nails, ceramic, bone, and glass vessels, which strongly suggests this was a significant activity area. During the soil color analysis, I created a soil color map, which included all the STPs. The map displayed the darkest soil color located in each unit. The only exceptions to these were those STPs that produced a gray color, which indicates the presence of water, and those whose darkest colors were found in the A horizon, which was located between 0 to 10 centimeters below surface. The darker soils, the anthrosols, were located throughout the tested area. However, 2 areas stand out. The STPs located in N565, between N565 and N600 were predominantly dark, with only 7 of the 49 STPs producing no anthrosols. The other location, previously identified due to the large concentration of artifacts, existed between the N520 line, the N550 line, and the E560 line. This area had 34 out of 45 STPs produce anthrosols. There was also an obvious break between the 2 midden areas, with grid lines N555 and N560 predominantly producing unaltered B horizon soils. Profile transects were created by visually connecting the profiles of STPs along the N540 line and the E540 line, which were mostly in the center of the site. Transects were also done for easting lines E530 and E536, as it was believed that the fort was located in that northern area. The intent of this exercise was to produce trench-like profiles across the site. The trench profiles can aid in detecting any patterning in anthracite distribution and can display the extensiveness and depths of midden. The transects were analyzed for the presence of features. Line N540 produced three possible previously unrecorded features located in STP N540, E515, STP N540, E545, and an N540, E590. These possible features were identified by the depths and changes in soil colors. On lines E530 and E536, you can see that the anthracites are deep, and those along the E536 line may indicate a possible fill feature. Using historical documents, I attempted to georeference 4 historic maps and 1 aerial photograph. These maps were drawn between 1793 and 1871. The photograph was taken in 1941. Only 3 maps were successfully georeferenced. Of these maps, the 1797 map by Juan Marie Pichet was the most significant in locating features. To georeference the Pichet map, I largely relied on the curvature of the Amite River. I first concentrated on the village settlement. The scale of the Pichet map is unclear. However, Robert Boyd, a surveyor in 1871, noted that the Galveztown lots on his survey were each a quarter arpent. Knowing this measurement, I was able to alter the scale of the shapefiles down to the appropriate size. I then superimposed the layout of the village. Sometime after the 1941 aerial photo, which you'll see in a minute, was taken, the Army Corps of Engineers dredged the Amite River, changing the riverbank location by adding approximately 30 meters of fill. Due to this altered landscape, I moved my georeference maps approximately 30 meters south of the current landscape to account for the fill. The Pichet map depicted 2 forts on his map, a proposed fort and the actual fort. The actual fort was located on the curve of the Amite River. Georeferencing the fort was more difficult. Unlike the known arpent area for each of the lots, there is no known measurement for the fort. Due to this, I opted to assume that the actual fort was drawn with the same scale as the village, creating a potentially biased result. I also adjusted the scale to match the Pichet's length of the fort. He had the fort reaching all the way across the bend in the river. After georeferencing the map, I looked for associations between the colonial features and the feature and artifact concentrations that were located during the excavations. Colonial feature function was based on previous research by a local Isleños historian, John Hickey, who has identified the location of the barracks, jail, and church from different historical records. Hickey identified the barracks and jail within the same square block, with each measuring a quarter arpent. To do this, I georeferenced the gridded site map displaying all the STPs over my hypothesized fort and village locations. If the fort and village have been properly located, the shovel testing appears to have taken place in the northern half of the village. The STPs appear to be largely in the area between the fort and the village, with some occurring within and east of the block containing the jail and barracks. The located features were identified to the east and north of the western boundary of the lots containing the jail and barracks. Several features suggested to be potholes and trenches were located on the hypothesized borders of the lots. This suggests that the lot borders may have been marked by posts and that drainage ditches may have been dug along the lot border, similar to what can be seen in Baton Rouge today. Artifact count was also significant. Areas with lack with a lack of artifacts could indicate an area outside of an identified lot, while areas with a large number of likely indicated close proximity to the lot. The artifact count located inside the hypothesized village block was relatively low, but this is to be expected as only 10 STPs were dug in this area. However, feature 6, which consisted of a depression with artifacts, was located inside the barracks lot and is the most revealing. Dr. Rob Mann conducted a block excavation in this area, which revealed a large pit feature and an additional 9 features, including 6 post holes. The excavation revealed over 19,000 counted artifacts and 33,000 grams of brick. The soil colors were also indicative of activity areas. From the previous analysis of the soil color, 2 areas of significant midden were located. The first area was located between lines N5 to 565 and N600, and appears to be located in and just outside the hypothesized fort. However, only 280 counted artifacts and 403.6 grams of brick were located in this area. The second area was the 30 by 60 meter area of dark soil. This area was located in and just outside of the lot containing the barracks and jail, and produced almost half of the artifacts recovered. Finally, I georeferenced the panoramic aerial map taken in 1941 to the modern landscape. In the aerial photo, dark soils is located within the projected and hypothesized location of the fort and village lots. The presence or absence of dark soils in aerial photographs is the result of a reflection of energy when the photograph is taken. Energy is absorbed rather than reflected when moisture exists in the soil. Buried features often retain this moisture. Large dark soil covers seen in the photograph and located east and west of the fort may indicate the presence of features and that this area should be investigated. Significantly, the location containing the 30 by 60 meter area of anthrosols contains some dark soil coloring, but there does not appear to be any soil discoloration in the location of the midden on the southern border of the fort. However, it should be noted that the dark coloring seen in the photograph could be related to later human activities on the landscape or recent flooding. My analysis of the artifact concentrations, features, and soils was very revealing on specific locations within the excavated grid. From my analysis of the artifact concentrations, I was able to determine the location of a significant activity localities, a 30 by 60 metered area located north of the N520 line, west of the E560 line, and south of the N560 line. Through the soil color analysis, I was able to determine 2 significant midden areas, the 30 by 60 metered area and the areas between the N565 and the N600 line. The Pritchett map was the most significant of the maps I georeferenced, as I was able to create shapefiles of the village lots and fort. From the comparison of these locations with the soil analysis, it appears as if the midden are located in the proximity of the fort and village lots. From my analysis of the artifact concentrations and the locations, the soil analysis, and the georeference maps, I believe that the Galvez Town Fort is directly under the bend of the Amite River, and the village was located approximately 60 to 70 meters south of this location. I believe the primary grid for the STPs was located within the area between the fort and the village. From the presence of midden, artifact concentrations, and features, I believe that this area was a highly used area. Future archaeological work and remote sensing will help to determine the accuracy of my analysis.
This field work that you did for your thesis, has there been any further work that's been done to try to locate that village in the south?
I know there have been projects that have passed through the area and over part of the site. Like I know a pipeline project went through there recently, but they haven't done any significant testing. And there's been no significant testing to determine the complete boundaries of the site, the fort location, and there's other features like the cemetery where they still don't know where that is.
That'd be a good thesis topic for someone, any grad students out there.
Well, so I know whenever I was when I participated in the field school in 2011, one of the things that was discussed is there's never really been much investigation into south of, I believe it's Highway 42. So is that what I was seeing in yours as well? Most of the
Yes, everything was north of it. There
Yeah.
were, in 2008, they did put 2 STPs south of the road, and I believe one of them produced a wire nail.
Okay.
But when I georeferenced the maps, I did notice that that was kind of in the location of where the plaza, according to how I georeferenced the maps, would be.
Yeah, I noticed that.
In historical records, the plaza was kept clear. So if that is, in fact, the plaza, there should not be much artifacts in there. But in the surrounding areas, there should be.
Right.
The cemetery, if it's ever located, should be southeast of the village.
And I think that's what was discussed whenever I was doing it with, or when I was there, was the cemetery was possibly in the land across the road, but it was hard to, get permission to go over there, at least at the time. So
Yeah, and that area is heavily forested, and I didn't notice anything in the aerial photograph to determine there was previously any evidence of the site of the cemetery. Sorry. I do know that Scaramuza, when he did his interviews, because he did his interview, his thesis, it was for his thesis, and his thesis was done in 1924. So he interviewed one of the landowners who took over the land and lived there in the 1850s. And the landowner told him that they used to collect flowers over the graves.
So, and y'all found some Native American stuff. Is there any evidence of interaction between historic
Yes.
contact groups?
There is, they found Chicot Red, which is a historic Native American ceramic and was frequently used in trading. In fact, one of the artifacts has markings of an iron knife on it, and they found a couple pieces of glass that had been flaked.
That's cool.
But the remaining artifacts were predating the site.
Okay, well, we really appreciate you coming on, and I think everybody will really find this interesting, especially since I know a lot of people have participated in the excavation.
Yeah, a lot of the LAS were a part of the excavations.